back. Am I still sharing? No, great, great. All right, the music is probably a little loud. Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, I hope that that is a practice that you will take on and consider over the next days and weeks, is just that practice of blessing everybody that you come in contact with. You know, blessing those that harm you, blessing those that love you, blessing those people that you'll never meet. I mean, I know that I make it a practice if I ever hear an ambulance or I pass an accident or something like that, that I send blessings to those people. And now I will be doing even more. Doing more. So to today's talk, I am talking about a subject called love and law, which I introduced last week. But I thought we'd go into a little bit deeper, this idea of love and law. And so our theme for the year is Mystics, Masters, and Paths of Enlightenment, AKA rising above the BS that has kept you scared, sick, and otherwise playing small. And in that BS, you can substitute the word belief system, or you can substitute whatever else you want to call BS, because it's kind of the same thing. So anyway, what we're talking about is what I mean with that is releasing those things that no longer serve us. And so I'm looking at different masters, spiritual teachers, different paths of enlightenment, to see what it is that these teachers, these great people, have done to show us that path of enlightenment and how to release what no longer serves us. So to quote Ernest Holmes, who's the founder of this movement we call Centers for Spiritual Living, he says this: Jesus, the way shower, the revealer of God, was an explorer of man's divinity. Two central themes of his ministry were love and law, the personal and the impersonal. By love, we mean the divine spirit that flows through everything, that's incarnated in our own lives. That's the part that's personal. The law is the part that's not personal, that's impersonal. That's the automatic law of cause and effect. And that's justice without judgment. It means punishment without viciousness. It's like talking about the consequences of the things that we do. And reward without partiality. So that's what Ernest Holmes has to say about that idea of love and law. He says lots more about it, but that's what I wanted to start with. So I think it's really important when we have conversations, these discussions with anybody, that we want to be on the same page with what we're talking about. So that means that you have to define the things that we're discussing so that we know that we're on the same page. So what does it mean when we talk about the law? What is that? And just a little like FYI, went and looked it up in Merriam-Webster and other dictionaries to come up with what does this exactly mean, law. So law is the rules that define the procedures, right? It's like a law in science is one of those generalized rules that explains what we see, what we observe. They appear to apply everywhere in the universe. Right? So laws are universal. Doesn't matter if you're in the United States or if you're on the moon. If it is a law, it is in fact the same. It's universal throughout the universe. So scientific laws, or what we call natural laws, imply that there's some kind of cause and effect. And scientific laws don't necessarily explain why what we observed is happening, only that it seems to happen a lot, and it happens over and over the same way. So we believe in Centers for Spiritual Living, what we teach, Science of Mind, is that there are spiritual laws, just like there are scientific laws, just like there are natural laws, that there are spiritual laws that govern everything that we do. And the big one of that is the law of cause and effect. You can call it seeking and finding, you call it asking and receiving, you can call it giving and getting, you can call it the law of life, you can call it karma. It's all the same thing. What goes around comes around. And that is a law of the universe. Now, we don't always see that in our lives, in our practice, because things have different periods of gestation, just like plants do, right? You plant a radish seed, it can grow, you know, you're going to have radishes in a couple of weeks. You know, something else, a tree is going to take years. Like everything has its gestation period. So you plant a seed, you might not see the results, right? You do an action today, you put a cause into effect. You might not see the effect for years. You might see the effect in an hour. You never know what it's going to be. But I think that's why we get people question whether that is in fact a law. But things, you know, what goes around comes around is another way of looking at it. So I don't know. I have lots of friends that are spiritually minded and spiritually motivated, and they're watching things like Gaia TV, and they're doing yoga classes, and you know, watching all this great stuff. In my house, we're like watching the Unabomber and the Tiger King. I don't know, has anybody seen Tiger King yet? Most of my spiritual friends haven't seen it, but it's like this series that is on Netflix that when it came out, I forget, let me see, I've got the date of it, so crazy. March 20th this year, right? In its first 10 days, it got like 34 million views. So anyway, we had to watch Tiger King. And the reason I bring it up is because it is actually a really good illustration of spiritual law, at least that piece of it. You know, we're talking about love and law, but the spiritual law piece, this guy named the Tiger King, he had it down. So let me tell you a little bit about this series if you haven't seen it yet. Not that I'm really encouraging you to watch it. It's kind of like, it's a little bit like a train wreck. Like you almost can't not see it. Once you start, you get into it, you have to keep watching. So the tagline, it's the Tiger King, Murder, Mayhem, and Madness. And so it's an exploration of this man who breeds big cats. He breeds tigers. And it's a really bizarre underworld that is populated by eccentric characters, including the main character, who is a gay, polygamist, redneck, sporting a mullet. He spirals out of control. It's, like I said, it's super crazy. A murder for hire story. So what happens in this story is this guy, he's breeding these big cats, and he has cameras around him all the time. I'm talking from when he gets up in the morning to like all throughout the day as he's with the tigers, and when he's dealing with the people that work for him, there's cameras on him recording everything because he wanted so badly to be famous. Well, he has an issue with somebody else who also breeds cats and big animals, and they have this huge feud. And anyway, he just really goes off the deep end. But again, he's recording all of this. So his threats to kill her and wanting her dead and all this crazy stuff he does is all on camera for everybody to see. So, you know, as the law works, he really put a lot of time and effort into being famous, being rich and famous, because that's what he wanted to experience. And it's actually pretty incredible that the law returned. You know, he planted these seeds for what he wanted, and he's got millions and millions of people watching this show. And this past January, remember the show came out in March? January, he was convicted for killing 5 of those tigers and is serving a 22-year sentence in prison. And he doesn't even get to watch the show that he inspired. So there's all these people. He's famous, just like world famous, this man is. And he can't even watch the show that is making him famous. He's not going to make a penny out of it. But he worked the law really well, right? So that's kind of the cautionary tale. Like this stuff works. This stuff works. You know, Ernest Holmes said that the pillars of Christ's ministry was love and law. He taught both. Put somebody on mute here. So, love and law, we need both of them to make the most of our life. So we've defined what the law is, right? I think we've defined it. Maybe I'll tell you a little bit more. So the law is impersonal. The law is like soil. You put a seed into the soil doesn't care if you're a good person, if you're a bad person, how old you are, you know, if you're making the most of it, it doesn't care. The soil just gives you back what you put into it, right? A light switch, for example, there are laws that govern electricity, that don't care who's flipping the light switch. Okay, there are laws that govern gravity. There's laws of that govern flight, right? The Wright brothers did not create the laws that govern flight. What they did was figure out what the law was so that they could use it. And so that's part of our task in Centers for Spiritual Living. And what we do is to study spiritual law. So the law of cause and effect is one of them, right? Law of attraction, that's another. That's something that brings a lot of people into this teaching, is the law of attraction. But the law is not personal. Again, it doesn't care who is doing it. It doesn't care if you're a good person or whatever. The law just goes with what you put into it. Okay, so that is our task, to learn how to use the law. Okay, so we're talking love and law. That's defining law. Now love, that's another whole picture. That's another whole picture. How do we define love? Well, I think it's probably easier to say what it's not. Probably easier to say what it's not. But to add to some of the conversation about that and some of the confusion, I can say, for example, I love pizza. I love Thai food. I love my grandchildren. I love my husband. I love what I do for a living. I love my home. I love singing. You see how there are all of those things that we say that we love, that we can love, that don't mean the same thing, right? We have this one word for love that means all of these different things to so many people. Whereas there are other words in language, and your words, how the words that you use define our understanding of the world. I'll give you an example. The Inuit people, right? The Aboriginal people of Alaska, where there is lots of cold and lots of snow. They have like 50 different words for the word snow, right? There is a word for snow that means wet snow. There is a word for snow that means powdery snow, like the kind you want to ski on. There are words, I guess, for when snow is falling, and there's words for when snow has fallen already. Like when they speak and they use those words in description, people understand exactly what they're talking about. Here we go with this word love that means so many things for so many different people that you have to wonder, what the heck does it mean, really? I think many of us get our definition of love from whatever the culture or whatever society tells us it is. So one of those great teachers is movies, of course, and TV, but also music. So I want to share with you a couple of songs. It's one of my pet peeves to hear these songs that to me don't really speak of what love is. And I shared one of them a little bit earlier that you might remember. You know, I think most of you will know this song. And it goes, treat me like a fool, treat me mean and cruel, but love me. Anybody know that one? Wring my faithful heart, tear it all apart, but love me. Won't you love me? Now, I don't know about you, but to take my faithful heart and tear it all apart, that is not love to me. Treat me mean and cruel, that's not love either. Okay, so let's see, there's other ones, right? When a man loves a woman, I'm not going to try and sing this one. He'll spend his very last dime trying to hold on to what he needs. He'll give up all of his comforts, sleep in the rain, if she says that's the way it's supposed to be. Now that's pitiful. If somebody's telling me I need to sleep out in the rain, that doesn't feel like love to me. I don't know about you, but oh, and then there's this other one. Gosh, if you've ever been up late at night and you listen to those Time Life, you know, get these DVDs of these love songs, and here's one. Love hurts, love scars, love wounds and marks any heart not tough or strong enough to take a lot of pain, take a lot of pain. Love is like a cloud, it holds a lot of rain. love hurts. Ooh, love hurts. No, honey, if it's really love, it doesn't do any of that. Love doesn't do that to people. And I get so aggravated when I hear people saying things like this is what love means. And I have to share the one that I'm not going to try to sing this one because I really hate this one the most. So don't think it's a generational thing, and it's not country, it's not rock and roll, because this song is called Grenade by Bruno Mars. Anybody else know that one? Uh-huh. So he says, I gave you all I had and you tossed it in the trash. You tossed it in the trash. Yes, you did. To give me all your love is all I ever asked. Because what you don't understand is I'd catch a grenade for ya. Throw my hand on a blade for ya. I'd jump in front of a train for ya. You know I'd do anything for ya. Because I'd go through all of this pain. This is the lyric right here. Take a bullet straight through my brain. Yes, I would die for you, baby, but you won't do the same. Now, you know why I can't stand that song. Because I've raised 3 children. And I know the first time I listened to the lyrics of that song, I was in a store and there were these young girls and they were on their phones and they're listening to this song and they're singing with it. And I'm thinking, God, what a travesty that is to have young people thinking that that's what love is. And I want to tell you, if somebody's sending you love letters and talking about they're going to take a bullet to their head or catch a grenade, you might need a restraining order. You know, don't do it. Run, and get some therapy. That's not love. That's not love. Okay. So if love isn't all of that, what is it? What is it? Well, for that, I'm going to go to the good book. Because in the Bible, it says, now you know that we don't always go by the Bible, but it is one of the great books, and I think it has a lot to say about what love really is. And in it, Jesus, the great way shower, the great teacher, the one that we're talking about, right, the great master, he says that the great commandment is to love God with all of our hearts and with our minds and our souls. That's the first great commandment. And the second one is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And on these 2 commandments, this is from Ernest Holmes, lie all of the love and the prophets. So number 1, to love God, right? And to love our neighbors as ourselves. What that means to me is that we see God in everything and in everyone. That's what it means to love somebody, right? That you can see yourself, that we have compassion, that we have empathy, that we can feel what it is that another person feels and want the very best, that we want to bless them. So back to Ernest Holmes, right? He says, how often do we wish to be loved without loving? I think I used this quote last week, right? To be forgiven without forgiving, to receive without giving. Right? That stuff just doesn't work because of the law, because of the impersonal law. When you give, you receive. If you give hatred, what are you going to get back? But more hatred, right? So we don't want to, that's what we don't want to put into the mix. And that's how love and law work together. We need to hear that again. That's what Lita says. Yes. So it's impossible for us to okay, let me go back. How often do we wish to be loved without loving, to be forgiven without forgiving, and to receive without giving? This is impossible. Jesus, who is more than a sentimentalist, saw the universe as love acting through law. We say that again. The universe is love acting through the law. And Jesus explained that every mistake must bring with it a just retribution, and that every act an equal compensation. We can't expect the universe to be divided against itself. It is always love bearing, it is always building and never destroying. Right, so when we come into this understanding of the law of life and love and its place in our life, then that law that bound us before, that law that kept us trapped, is now the thing that frees us. Because in being love, in being the example of what we want to see, we set a new cause in motion. And it's grace. It's grace. You know, it allows us to kind of, not that you bypass, but you do. You can sometimes bypass the law because you put something else. It kind of like it cancels it out, right? By being that forgiving, loving person that we want to be. Let me see what else I want to say here. There's such great stuff from Ernest Holmes in this. And a lot of what I'm teaching today comes from this book here. You'll see it's an old tattered copy. A book that is called Words That Heal Today. And it was written by Ernest Holmes, I don't know, back in the 60s probably. And it really is about the teachings of Christ, you know, as that spiritual, you know, as the master. And that's one of the things, another distinction that I want to make here of what we teach at Centers for Spiritual Living. And that is the idea that Christ was not the great exception, but rather he was the great example of what we could each be if we followed those two very simple things, right? The idea of loving God and loving our neighbors as ourselves. And then what is God? But God is love. That's in the Bible as well, isn't it? That God is love. You know, he also said, how can you proclaim or profess to love God who you can't see, right? And yet not love the people that are right there, right in your life, that you may see every day, right? So here's another great quote. I love this one too. He says, we are all waiting for something to happen that will free us from bondage and give us more life. We're waiting for some external event, the advent of some teacher who's going to show us the way, not realizing that he has already come, written his lines on the pages of history, and departed, leaving behind a code of spiritual ethics and a law of conduct, the following of which alone can free us from our self-created bondage. I'm going to go through that like piece by piece. Right? He says we're all waiting for something to happen that's going to free us from bondage. Now, I used to attend a church before I found this one, where after every service, they would say, Jesus is coming, Jesus is coming. You know, just be waiting for Jesus to come. And so people are, you know, still kind of waiting for Jesus to come. And I would bet that if Jesus showed up in the flesh today, nobody would know him. He could be sitting right next to you. And you'd be wondering, is this guy for real? You know? But the fact is that he was already here. You know, people are waiting for something outside of them to show them the way. But the fact is the master was here, as Ernest says. He wrote in the, how did he put it? Written his lines on the pages of history to show us the way. So people who are waiting for the second coming as if it's going to be in the guise of another person, we're the second coming. That's what I have to say. We are the second coming. You know, we don't profess to have people looking for or hoping for or wishing for a savior outside of them, right? We each have been given these teachings. We have minds with which to reason. We have hearts to love with, and we're here to be our own saviors. Right? We're here to learn and to love and to take the teachings that we've been given, not just from the Christ, but from the Buddha or from the Quran, from all these different spiritual teachings that we're here to use and make the most of this thing that we call life. You know, if you're waiting for somebody outside of you to save you, you're going to be waiting a long time. Or maybe you need to go to a different church, because that's not what we preach here. We are here for people who want to find their purpose, who are willing to step out in faith, right, and understanding. Down here, underneath there. Who want to have meaning and purpose within their own lives and are willing to step up and take accountability for what's theirs, and have the courage to follow through of what is theirs to do. And that's what we're about. And that's why, maybe that's why our churches aren't full, overflowing with people, because this is not a teaching that makes it easy for us, right? We're each here to do our part. We're not for the faint of heart, or for people who want to put things off on other folks. So I'm going to see here, I have some notes here. Okay, not notes, but quotes or questions from people in the chat. That Jesus is here. Yes, Jesus is here now. The Christ nature, the Christ consciousness is here within each and every one of us. Certainly in potential, if not in actuality, it is there in each one of us, and it's for us to uncover that. Again, that's the whole theme of what we're talking about this year, is releasing the BS, the belief systems that no longer serve us, so that we can tap into that universal presence that is here. And there's a whole lot of BS around this thing we call love, isn't there? Right? We could do probably a whole study on that. And we're gonna do a study for the rest of the month. I don't know that we'll do it for the whole year, but yes. So Jesus is here. Wow. Yes, we are little Jesuses. And Susan says, I like that. We are the second coming. God is within each of us. Yes, that is absolutely true. So here's another, I'll close with this other quote here from Ernest Holmes. He says, use the talent that you possess today. You each have some love, some kindness, some faith, some belief in God, or something greater than you. Let this be your pattern. Let this be what you bring forth today. Bring forth those talents that you have. Use them so that they may be multiplied. So that is my call to action to each and every one of you, is to be the blessing that you seek, to be the love that you wish to see in the world, to be the kindness, to be the compassion, to be the empathy, to be the joy. And we have so many opportunities before us to be that presence. Not wait for it to show up from someplace on the outside, because you're going to be waiting a long time. Right? We need to be the change that we want to see in this world.